Welcome back to Part 2, Common Style Elements. Here we'll examine common style elements including fonts, layouts, and colors. To control font properties, you can use the following 4 CSS properties that control the style of the font, the weight, the size, and the family. A style is simply whether or not you want font to display normally or italicized. The weight specifies whether or not the font is bold, or you can even make it lighter than usual. The font size specifies how large the font should be. You can use various values for this. And the font family specifies the type of font. For example, Times New Roman, Helvetica, or a generic serif font. Font family availability actually depends on the browser and the system. It's best to include a generic font family rather than using an uncommon font. Multiple properties can be set at once using the font property. Here we've set 3 different properties. We've set the font to be bold, 3 M's, and serif. Various units can be used for font size, including percentage, pixels, points, and M's. Percentage, for example 100%, would be the size of the default font. Points are straightforward, 12 point, 14 point, etc. M's are a unit in typography such that 1 EM is equal to about 16 points. Every element has a margin, a border, and some padding. An element's content is first surrounded by the padding, followed by the border, and then the margin around that. All 4 sides can be set independently using the properties depicted here. Elements, usually divs, have margins, borders, and padding around their content. You can set each independently using margin top, margin right, margin bottom, or margin left. Or you can set them all at once. Margin 10px would set the margin on all 4 sides to be 10 pixels. Or you can set all 4 sides using different numbers. The order is top, right, bottom, left. Here the top and bottom will have 10 pixels for its margin, while the right and left will have 20 pixels. Similar rules are established for padding. Padding top, padding right, padding bottom, padding left, or simply just padding to set all 4 at the same time. Borders are similar, but they have more components, including width, style, and color. There are many possible values for styles, including none, in which case the border is not rendered at all, dotted, dashed, solid, etc. As a shortcut, you can set all 3 of these properties using the border property. Here we've set the border to be 5 pixels width, solid, and its color set to green. Similar units can be used as before, such as pixels and M's. You can control colors in one of 2 ways. Foreground color, usually the text color, can be manipulated using the color property. The background color can be set using the background color property. There are many named colors, including red, green, white, black, etc., that the CSS supports. However, if you want to define your own custom color, you can use the red, green, blue color value system, in which each of these 3 components has an integer value 0 through 255. Here we have an example of full red, full green, and no blue, which corresponds to yellow. That's because this is an additive color system. So for example, a full complement of all 3 of these colors would correspond to white. No contribution of any of these colors would correspond to black. You can also express the values using a hexadecimal numbering system. As before, we have a full red, full green, but no blue contribution corresponding to FF, FF00, in which case you use a hash in front of it instead. You can also control the opacity of an element. That is, you can determine how transparent it is, with a value ranging from 0 up to 1, with 1 being completely opaque and 0 being completely transparent. Essentially, you can't see it. An opacity of 0.5 would mean that it's about half transparent, half opaque. Anything behind it would bleed through. You can include the opacity in the RGB color system by using RGBA instead. The A here stands for alpha channel, in which case you define the red, the green, the blue value, as well as a 4th value corresponding to the opacity. In addition, you can hide some elements so that they're not displayed. This is common when using animations in a web page, if you want to hide something faded in or faded out. The visibility property can either be visible or hidden. The display property can have one of 3 values: inline, block, or none. An inline value means that the element does not start on a new line and only takes up about as much space as is necessary. This is typical when using a span element. A block display level element starts a new line and takes up the full width of its parent element, much like a div element. None means that it's not displayed at all. Display none will mean that the element does not affect the layout at all. The page will be rendered as if the element doesn't even exist. Whereas visibility hidden does not show the element, but the element still takes up about as much space as if it were visible. There are over 315 CSS properties supported in CSS version 3. Here's a good resource on all the documentation of all these properties as well as their possible values. In addition, here are 2 resources that you can use to play around with various styles.